Probably will in the end.
תראה, אתה תסבול, אתה תשתה כל מיני שטויות, תתאפק ותתאפק, ובסוף תעשה את זה.
Anyway, today's the 20th of, the Rebbe said not to do it. The Rebbe said not to do it. Yeah. He said you cannot do it. You don't have to. Anyway, for me, I don't know, for someone else. No, one time. Anyway, it's the 20th of November, 20th of Cheshvan, the 21st of November. Today is the birthday of the Rebbe Rashab, you were here? Yeah. And it's a good day if you live in a city where there's the Tomchei Tmimim, the yeshiva that he founded, to go and learn something there. In any case. And we're in chapter 29 of Shorosh Mitzvahs Tefillah. So yesterday, I just want to recap because we didn't have a recording. So just quickly, the recap is, we read why the Maharal of Prague was against the Rambam's opinion that God is intellect, and he gave a number of reasons, and in the end he said God has to be above all definition, and when something is above all definition, then defining him as intellectual takes away from the important difference that there is between him and everything else. And we said that he doesn't enclose in anything, and any kind of enclothement that he has, whether it be in the intellect, in the actions, in creation, whatever it is an act for him. And those actions do not change him, in the same way that our actions of me lifting this does not change me. Okay. And then we saw that the Tosfos Yom Tov, his student, also recaps this in very short in his Perush on, where was this? He didn't say where it was. In any case. So he recaps this very quickly. Now we continue. ולכן קשה לדברי הרמב"ם קושיה מעניין שינוי רצון, שאם כן הוא שינוי בעצמותו חס וחלילה, מאחר שרצונו הוא עצמותו. So what we get out of this in the end, page 262, is that if you take the Rambam's approach as Hashem is intellect, then you have to say that there's a change in his will. Because when he wants something, as far as the Rambam is concerned, again, and you have to ask here, why did the intellect suddenly become will? It's not the same thing. But I think he's doing it like a kal v'chomer. He's doing like, if his intellect is already him, then all the more so his will. I think he's saying something like that. And so therefore, there must be change in his will. And which means changes in he himself. מה שאין כן לדבריו שעצמותו ומהותו מרומם ומובדל מגדר ומהות פרטי. אם כן לא שייך כלל לומר במהותו בעצמותו גדר רצון וחוכמה ודעת, אלא מרומם ומתנשא עילוי רב ממהות וגדר חוכמה. But according to the Maharal, you can't say anything about Hashem. He's not intellect, he's not knowledge, and he's also not his will. Very important thing. He's not his will. This is a big deal.
It's almost like...
How could you understand how difficult this was in the 1600s to say this? That you are not even your will. I mean, they had to take it from somewhere. So by a person, to say that the person is not his will is almost like impossible. What do you mean? His will is who he is. In fact, today when you look at what does it mean to have human rights, the most important part of having freedom is that you can exercise your will.
Do what you want.
Do whatever you want. Why? Because that's what it means to be human. But here is suddenly this, and this is scary for a lot of people. You're saying, again, if we apply it to ourselves, can I even say this about myself, that my will is not who I am? So the person has to ask himself, what, my will never changed? I didn't want something when I was younger and now I don't want it at all? Even my deepest, most essential wills, did they not change? So he says, certainly, for us this is already easy to a certain extent.
Be perverted in a man.
What?
The will
of course it can be perverted. Yes. So the will is not necessarily who I am either.
No.
But again, this is very hard for a lot of people to accept, because what do you mean? So you're going to tell me, what people mean by freedom to exercise their will, they mean don't force me to do what you want. But even that's not so easy.
It's not you because the will is usually הרצון לעשות משהו. זה לא רצון.
The will
Right,
is
it's
not
not a
the
will.
essential man. Is that
Right,
what you're saying?
yeah.
זה תאווה או
It's, right, it's a craving. It's like a craving, and I interpret it as will.
זה לא אתה.
And it's really not me, and it can change. But even when you talk about my deepest essence, the will that doesn't change. For instance, the will to live.
The deep, okay.
Can you say that that's not me, my will to live? So the answer is, of course not. I can say that. Definitely your will to live is not you. Why? Because people have sacrificed themselves.
That's true.
They gave up their lives for a higher cause. Or for even smaller things, unfortunately.
Sure.
So, right, so you can't say, so the same thing about Hashem. Hashem is at least that smart, that he's not his will. אלא שאנחנו אין בכוחנו לצייר מהו מהות שלמעלה מגדר חוכמה, כמו שכתוב בליקוטי אמרים, חלק ב', פרק ח', אין שם הטעם. The only problem is that for us it's very difficult. So now we've divorced Hashem from all these levels. Now we say, so what is he? So for us it's very hard to imagine a positive thing, to say something positive is something that's not anything. It's not the will, it's not the wisdom, it's not the knowledge, it's not the feeling. He says, hey, what is it? So you're left with Hashem being like an unidentified object. You don't know what it is.
But, in simplistic terms, isn't his will through Simpson?
Right?
Okay, but that is essential Hashem, if you want to call it.
Right. What is that? So we don't know. ובחינת רצון וחוכמה ודעת הם מפעולותיו, רוצה לומר שפעל ויצר את בחינת החוכמה ואת בחינת הרצון. So what we call will, God's will, not ours, God's will, His wisdom, His knowledge, these are things He created. It's not Him. These are creations.
Creations or like
actions. He calls it actions.
Okay.
Right, not a creation, but an action. Right. It's the same argument. But imagine, for us, to some degree it's easy to say this. To some degree you have to work a little, but we understand this already. If this was not understood in the 16th century, meaning that you had to have the Maharal bring this out, so it tells you where most people were at that time, that they really thought that their will and their knowledge was they themselves. They couldn't divorce it yet. They couldn't separate the two. They didn't see it, the essence. I mean, because I'm assuming that people took their image of God from themselves. And so, again, because that's how Kabbalah mostly works. Right. Whatever you say about yourself, you should be able to say more about Hashem. דהיינו, כשנאמר וידע אלוקים, היינו בחינת פעולה, כמו שאתה אומר, וידבר ויעש. Meaning when it says God knew, it's not that He knew in the sense that the way that we know. He acted to know. He did something and then He knew.
He didn't find out.
No.
No.
It's not finding out in the sense that it was there.
Yes.
It's an act.
Yes.
Some kind of act. אבל עצמותו למעלה מגדר ומהות מדע. But his essence is truly above knowledge, or the power of knowledge. ולא שחס וחלילה אינו יודע. It doesn't mean he doesn't know. בוודאי אין דבר נעלם ממנו. Of course everything is revealed to him. Yes. Like we said, without an action, everything is known already. So when you say vayeda Elokim, when you say God knew, you have to interpret this as some kind of action. What does it mean that He knew? And this, and truthfully, we already find in the medieval commentaries that they say whenever it says something like Vayeda Elokim, Hashem knew. If I'm not mistaken, it's the Ramban who says this, and he learned this from the Medrash that we learned a while ago, that Keshem shani poel kach ani nikra. We said this about the names of Hashem, that each one of the names is like an act. It's a representation of some kind of way that God acts. So he says there, I believe it's a Ramban, he says, whenever you hear that Hashem did something, even it says that He knew, which is like, for us, is not an action. It's just, it's us. It's a mental construct. We didn't do something to know. By Hashem, it is some kind of action, and you should look for the repercussions. Meaning something changed in the world when he did that. In other words, when I lift this tissue, something changed in the world. Now, if I say I know the tissue, I don't think the tissue changes. Right? It's the same. I'm looking at it. That's all. I'm not doing anything to it. But by Hashem, you have to say something changed here. Something changed in the world. There has to be a repercussion. There has to be an effect. כי מאחר שיצר בחינת הדעת מכל שכן שאין דבר נעלם ממנו, כמו שכתוב מנוטה האוזן הלא ישמע ויצר עין הלא יביט. We have these verses that tell us, does the one who creates hearing and the hear not hear? Does the one who creates the eye not see? Of course he has all this. That's not what it means when he goes to see or when he goes to hear. It's an act that means something else. אלא שמה שאין דבר נעלם מעצמותו הוא בבחינת שלמעלה מעלה אין קץ מגדר מהות דעת. Because what we mean when we say that he knows everything is not like our knowledge. It's not the way that I need to know something. It's something entirely different. It's above what we call knowledge. אבל מה שכתוב והידע אלוקים שהוא בחינת דעת ממש, היינו בחינת פעולה, ורוצה לומר אצילת ספירת הדעת האצילות שבידיעה זו יודע את כל הנבראים בחינת דעת ממש. But when we say that he knew, what do we really mean? He used the sphere of knowledge to do something. He used it to do something. That's what happened. It's not that he didn't know before. He used the sphere of knowledge to do something with it. And the same thing, כנו בעניין הרצון, is about his will. משום הכי חידוש ושינוי רצון אינו שינוי בעצמותו, חס וחלילה. And because of this, we have to say that when it seems to you that he has a new will, he suddenly changed his mind, the will was changed, but not him. Now this is an incredible breakthrough in thinking. Again, what does it mean exactly? Like he said, the Baal Tanya writes, it's very hard for us to imagine what is above all these things that can treat will and knowledge and all these things as actions. It's very hard for us to imagine what that is, but that's exactly the point. You're not supposed to be able to imagine exactly what Hashem is. The whole point is he's not definable. But what does it mean? It means that when you pray to Hashem, the will changes. And that doesn't mean that there's a change in him. He's not changing himself. Only his will is changing. So when we daven, when we ask Hashem for something, we are changing what he wants. And that doesn't take away anything from the fact that he doesn't change. He doesn't change. Because he himself is above his will. So what I want to read tomorrow, I thought we would get to it today, is to read from the Maggid Son, from the Avram HaMalach, what he writes about the Rambam.
Could this be where a rabbi has two people with a very similar situation? There's two different.
And he gives them two different pieces of advice.
Yes,
right.
Is that sort of
a
that?
little bit like that.
The Rebbe
right.
didn't change.
Right. The Rebbe still wants the same thing.
Right, exactly.
But to you, it seems like
the will, so to speak, is different.
Seems to be different. That's a very good example.
Yeah.